Hi there, this is Willow, and I wanted to go over some important points for week 3 from your Farley chapter 4 reading and the Ambrosino chapter. So I'm just going to highlight some things that I would like you to be aware of and to kind of reinforce in the readings. On Farley page 47, I just want you to see that there is a pretty good definition of the generalist social work perspective, and Ambrosino will also discuss this. And then I also want to highlight that in the next paragraph on page 47 that there is still no agreement on the definition of generalist. So what that means is that some students read that and go, wow, how can we say that this is a really valid thing if people can agree on a definition? Because definitions are really important. I'm emphasizing that in the class. I want you to look up words, not just gloss over them. So definitions are really important. However, when it comes to defining something like a perspective or a theory, people do have a little bit different view on it or opinion on it. So there are different definitions, and then authors, researchers, people who are experts in a particular area will talk about the different definitions and which pieces of them they agree with and don't agree with, using research and data to support their information, or at least they should. So it's an interesting thing that there isn't one general agreed on definition of generalist practice, but you can use Farley's definition as well as Ambrosino's and other folks to reflect on what it means and what it means to you, most importantly. And then on page 50, Farley talks about that ecological theory is a subset of systems theory. Some people think systems and ecological are the same thing. Some people don't. So you'll get a little bit different view in different places. But here they're saying it's a subset theory. And then on page 59 in the second paragraph, this is a really important point. The authors say, social work is not an antiseptic, does not aim to make life free from stress-producing problems or relieve people of their responsibilities. Problems can be building blocks. Crises are frequently the mainspring of adaptive behavior. So I encourage you to reflect on this for yourself, but it's just really important. A lot of people say, oh, I need to go into social work to help people. And sometimes I think that means they've got to solve all their problems for them, that they're sort of a failure if people continue to have problems or they come with problems or something like that. And so I just want to reinforce to you that resolving or solving people's problems is not necessarily always our goal. Sometimes people need to be assisted in figuring out how to solve their own problems, and they might not necessarily like that. So it's a tricky business, helping people, but we're not just supposed to be the person who slaps a band-aid on something and says, here's your answer, now go away, or now go live your life. But to see that they can often have the answers to situations. So, and you can reflect on that in your own life when you've had problems or challenges. Did it always help to have someone solve those problems for you? And then after a base for generalist social work practice, again on page 59, the authors mention that since the generalist social worker must work with the micro, meso, and macro systems, it's important that they be grounded in the traditional social work methods. And so we'll be talking about that as we go on through the class, about the importance of grounding having a good understanding and practice in the generalist social work perspective. Now, moving on to Ambrosino's chapter, wanted to point out a few things. On page 45, under the impact of theoretical frameworks on intervention, the first sentence is really important. All individuals perceive what is going on in their lives and in the world somewhat differently. And they go on to say that people view their environments and the forces that shape them differently depending on many things, and they talk about some of those many things. And so I have in the discussion questions an exercise for you to do that will kind of give you a sense of these different perspectives that we have on the world. And so it might help you get a little bit deeper understanding of that. But, you know, we all come from so many different backgrounds, and even if you have twins, they still have different interpretations of the same event. So it's really important to understand that, acknowledge it, and try as much as we can in any given situation to sort of put ourselves in another person's shoes and see why they may think or behave a certain way. On page 46, how people perceive their world determines how involved they are and how they interact with it. So perception is a really important view, and the Ambrosino talks later on in this chapter near the end about different perspectives besides the systems or ecological perspective, and one they mention is the constructionist perspective. There are perspectives like the constructionist, social constructionist, symbolic interactionist, and constructionist, and they all kind of relate in that they're about the meanings that people make in the world. They're about the way that people think about the world. And so they can be perspectives that can be very valuable in working with clients. And then down under the third paragraph on 46 in the left column, they talk about some worldviews have more influence than others on the world, national, and state and local policies, and how society is structured. And so what they're kind of talking about there is politics. And social workers can definitely have an influence on politics. I've been involved in politics a lot, anywhere from writing letters and making phone calls to my representatives, all the way up to participating in civil disobedience on actions where I thought more attention needed to be focused. So as social workers, I tend to think that this component of social work, it has become a lot less visible or practiced. Actually getting involved in politics and taking action like demonstrations, or even just writing a letter or making a phone call to somebody who could perhaps look at a piece of legislation differently. I don't think it's done as much as it used to be, and that could be a reflection of our times. The 70s was certainly a hotbed of political activity, and maybe people are in general are interested in it, but social workers can definitely have an impact, and so that's why it's important to understand how to analyze policies well. Policies are also legislation and acts like the ones we discussed in week 2. Then on page 47, the authors start talking about having an understanding of theory. And they do a pretty good job of defining theory, but I don't think they make it clear that theory should be based on research. They have an example of 2 roommates and one person, collecting some information, and they're talking about it being making sense of facts. But